It began not with trumpets' clang, but in the whisper of an ordinary moment. For those who have stumbled upon this message, let there be no doubt. This is no coincidence. You are not here by accident. This encounter is orchestrated, a divine appointment, echoing through the fabric of time to meet you precisely where you are. In the pages of Scripture, God's movements are often subtle but profound. Think of Moses tending sheep in the wilderness when a bush burned with fire yet was not consumed. Or consider Saul of Tarsus, blinded on the road to Damascus, hearing a voice that would reshape his life. Divine interruptions are not merely disruptions, they are invitations. They pull us from the ordinary to the extraordinary, from wandering to purpose. Perhaps, like Gideon hiding in the winepress, you feel unworthy, uncertain, or even resistant. But God's call is seldom reserved for those who feel ready. Instead, He chooses the unlikely, the hesitant, the doubting. It is His strength, not ours, that fulfills the call. This moment is your burning bush, your road to Damascus. The timing is intentional. You have been chosen to step into a season of power, not the world's version, but the kind that reshapes hearts, breaks chains, and builds bridges where walls once stood. This power reflects the one who calls you, a quiet yet irresistible force drawing you to Himself. Consider Peter stepping out of the boat onto the storm-tossed waters. His faith faltered, and he began to sink, but the hand of Christ lifted him. Transformation begins not with perfection, but with the courage to step forward, even when the waters seem treacherous. The doubts you carry, those whispers of insufficiency, the weight of past failures, are not roadblocks but stepping stones. God specializes in turning resistance into submission through coercion and love. Resistance is not the end of the story, it is often the beginning of a deeper surrender. Let this be the moment where your heart begins to shift. Like the prodigal son who rose and returned to his father, you are called to rise. And as you do, you will find a father running to meet you, arms outstretched, ready to embrace you with a love that defies human understanding. This journey will not be without its trials. There will be moments when the way forward seems unclear, when doubt whispers louder than truth. Yet remember the words of the psalmist, "Your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path." The journey of faith is illuminated not by the brilliance of daylight, but by the steady glow of God's promises. As you move forward, you will find transformation taking root. What once seemed impossible will become attainable. The doubts that plagued you will give way to admiration for the one who calls you. The resistance you once felt will dissolve into a submission that is not defeat, but victory. The kind of victory that comes from aligning your will with the Creator of all things. This is more than a story. It is your story. It is the continuation of the great narrative God has been weaving since the dawn of time. You are stepping into a role only you can fill, a purpose designed uniquely for you. In this moment, the veil is lifted, and you see not the chaos of the world, but the careful hand of the one who holds it all together. Do not delay. Like Esther, you have been called for this time. Step into the story, into the transformation, into the arms of the one who has been waiting for you all along. This is your divine appointment, the beginning of a journey that will change you and the world through you. Number 1. The Shepherd's Calling. In the quiet valley of Ishara, nestled between rolling hills and streams that whispered of forgotten times, lived a shepherd named Eliam. The days were simple, marked by the rhythm of tending his flock and the soft cadence of prayers murmured under a star-laden sky. Yet, within him stirred a longing, a yearning for something beyond the pasture, a sense that the horizon concealed a reality far more significant than his eyes could see. One night, as the crescent moon bathed the valley in silver, Eliam found himself restless. His heart thudded, as if responding to an unspoken summons. He climbed to the summit of the highest hill, his breath forming clouds in the chill air. He gazed upon the heavens and prayed, "Lord of all, if you are there, show me your will. Let me know I am not alone." The answer came not in a thunderous voice, but in a gentle light that pierced the night, a single star burning brighter than all the rest. As Eliam watched, the star descended, becoming a luminous figure cloaked in radiance. A warm yet commanding voice resonated in his soul. "Eliam, do not fear. "You have been chosen." "Chosen? For what, Lord?" His voice trembled, for though he was a humble shepherd, the moment's weight was undeniable. "To bear my light into the world," the voice replied. "The days grow dark, and hearts falter, but in you burns a spark that can ignite hope. Go forth and speak my truth." With those words, the figure vanished, leaving Eliam standing in the glow of the divine presence lingering within him. He descended the hill not as a mere shepherd, but as a man transformed. The shift from that night, Eliam was different. His eyes gleamed with a clarity that unsettled even the most stoic elder in the village. His words carried a weight that compelled strangers to listen. When he spoke of love, forgiveness, and the eternal kingdom, it was as if heaven reached through him to touch the hearts of those who heard. But this transformation did not come without trials. Friends turned wary, fearing the intensity of his newfound conviction. Yet, Eliam bore their doubts with grace, his faith unwavering. "The light within," he often said, "is not mine to keep, but to share." The more he embraced his calling, the more his surroundings shifted. The barren fields began to yield abundant crops. The sick who came to him for prayer found themselves healed, not always in body but often in spirit. It was as though the valley responded to the energy emanating from its chosen son. Confrontation and revelation. One day, a traveler from a distant land arrived. His name was Cassian, a scholar renowned for his skepticism of all things divine. "You speak of light and truth," Cassian said, his voice edged with challenge, "but what proof can you offer a man of reason?" Eliam met his gaze without hesitation. "The proof lies not in argument, but in experience. Sit with me and listen, not with your ears, but your heart." Cassian scoffed but agreed. As Eliam spoke of the Creator's boundless love and the sacrifice that redeemed mankind, Cassian felt something stir within, a warmth he could neither explain nor deny. That night the scholar wept under the same star-studded sky that had once called to Eliam. The power within. Eliam's journey continued, each step drawing him closer to the divine purpose for which he had been chosen. Yet he knew that the power was not his to control. To harness it fully, he often told those who followed him, one must first surrender. The light is strongest in the hands of those who do not seek to wield it for themselves. Eliam's journey. In time, Eliam's story became legend. The valley of Eshara was transformed, not by grand miracles, but by the quiet, persistent change that began in one man and rippled outward. Even as years passed and Eliam himself faded into eternity, the seeds he planted bore fruit in the lives of countless others. For in every heart that dared to believe, the light burned anew. Number 2. The Shepherd's Call. In a time before time, when the earth still hummed with the resonance of its Creator's voice, there was a small, unremarkable village nestled in the hills of Judea. It was the place where the world's great stories might bypass, unnoticed by its humble inhabitants. Yet, in the quiet folds of obscurity, it was here that the Creator chose to plant the seed of an eternal narrative. One night, a young shepherd named Eli sat alone under a sky ablaze with stars. His sheep dozed nearby, their soft bleats fading into the cool night air. Eli had always felt something was just beyond the ordinary's veil, as if the heavens themselves longed to speak to him. He couldn't name this feeling, but it stirred within him like an ancient melody, calling him to listen. Suddenly, a radiant light burst from the heavens, brighter than 1,000 suns, yet as gentle as dawn's first light. Eli shielded his eyes, trembling, as an angelic figure emerged. "Do not fear," the voice said, resonating like music woven from truth. "I bring you tidings of great joy, not just for you, but all mankind." The angel spoke of a child, a Savior born that night in the town of Bethlehem. "You will find him wrapped in swaddling cloths and lying in a manger," the angel said. And then, with a chorus of celestial beings singing praises to God, the light faded, leaving Eli in awe. Though his heart burned with urgency, doubt crept into his thoughts. "Why me?" he wondered. He was but a poor shepherd, unlearned and insignificant. Surely such news belonged to kings or prophets, not to someone as unworthy as he. Yet Eli could not deny the call. He gathered his courage, left his flock, and began the journey toward Bethlehem. Along the way, he encountered two other shepherds who had witnessed the same vision. Their stories matched his, each detail reinforcing the truth of the angel's message. Together they walked, their steps quickened by the hope that this night was no ordinary. When they arrived at the stable, the sight that met them was humble and profound. There, lying in the manger, was the child, his tiny form radiating a peace that seemed to still the air. Mary, the mother, smiled gently as the shepherds knelt, overwhelmed by the holiness of the moment. Eli gazed at the infant, and for the first time he felt indeed seen, not by the world which had overlooked him, but by the one who mattered most. In this child's eyes, he saw not judgment, but love, not condemnation, but purpose. The doubts that had shadowed his heart dissolved, replaced by an unshakable certainty. He had been chosen to witness this miracle, not because of who he was, but because of who God is. As they left the stable, the shepherds could not keep the news to themselves. They spoke of the Savior to everyone they encountered, their words carrying the light of that holy night into the world's darkness. Some scoffed, dismissing their story as the ramblings of simple men. But others listened, their hearts stirring with the same melody Eli had felt under the stars. And so the message spread, not through the mouths of kings or the halls of power, but through the ordinary and the overlooked. It was a story of love descending into the world's brokenness, a story that whispered to all who would hear, "You are seen, you are known, you are loved." The call to you. Even now, this story is not confined to the past. Its light stretches across centuries, seeking hearts ready to receive its truth. It calls to you, just as it called to Eli on that starry night. Will you listen? If this message resonates with you, don't let it slip away. Act on it. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Comment with 99 to signal your readiness to embrace the shepherd's call. Like the message, amplify its reach, and subscribe to its truth, for it is not merely a tale, but a lifeline to the eternal. The Creator sees you just as he saw Eli. You are not insignificant. The shepherd is calling. Will you answer? Number 3. The call to radiance, embracing divine power. Every life has a moment when the veil of ordinary existence is lifted, revealing a more profound truth waiting to be grasped. This revelation is sudden for some, a blinding light on a Damascus road. For others, it is a quiet stirring, like the whisper of wind in the upper branches of a tree. Yet, in every instance, it begins with the same question. What if I am called to something greater? This is no idle question. It is the echo of eternity planted within the heart, a reminder of the image in which we were made. The scriptures whisper of this truth. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. Psalm 1339 verse 14. Yet, how often do we walk as though we are mere shadows, bound by fear, doubt, and the chains of a mundane self-perception? The answer lies not in our strength, but in the one who has called us. The Bible is rich with examples of unlikely heroes. Moses, who stammered before Pharaoh. Gideon, who threshed wheat in secret. Peter, who faltered on the waves. None of them began as paragons of virtue or confidence, yet each was transformed by stepping into the power bestowed upon them by God. The process, surrendering the false self. Transformation begins with surrender, not to defeat, but to divine design. It requires peeling away the layers of doubt and the lies we have believed about our limitations. Moses questioned God at the burning bush. Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh? Exodus chapter 3 verse 11. God's answer was not a list of Moses' qualifications, but a simple assurance. I will be with you. So too must we abandon the temptation to measure our worth by earthly standards. Fear and self-doubt are no match for the one who speaks universes into being. To embrace this truth is to take the first step toward radiance. Imagine a knight laying aside rusted armor, weighed down by years of wear and false protection, and instead donning the gleaming armor of a king. This is the shedding of the false self, the identity shaped by fear, and the dawning of the true self, forged in the likeness of God. The transformation, becoming co-creators. In stepping into divine power, we move from passive observers of life to active participants in God's redemptive story. This is no mere behavior change. It is a complete rewrite of self-perception. Once a church persecutor, Paul became its greatest advocate, declaring, "I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me." Philippians 4, verse 13. It is not enough to believe in the abstract. Faith must become action. Consider Peter stepping out of the boat onto the stormy sea, Matthew chapter 14, verse 29. The miracle was that he walked on water and dared to step at all. The call to follow Christ is always a call to movement, away from safety and toward the unknown, where His power is made perfect in our weakness. The result? Standing on the precipice of magnificence. As we discard doubt and embrace divine power, we find ourselves standing on the precipice of something magnificent. It is not a promise of earthly ease, but of eternal significance. We are invited to claim our rightful influence, not for our glory, but for His. "You are the light of the world," Christ declared, Matthew 5, verse 14. The light is not ours to hoard, but to shine, illuminating the paths of others. This is the paradox of divine power. The more we yield to God, the more fully we become ourselves. It is as if the master craftsman were chipping away at marble, not to destroy, but to reveal the masterpiece within. Final word: the choice lies before us, as it has for every saint and sinner, to shrink back into the shadows of fear or to step forward into the light of divine calling. C.C. Lewis once wrote, "There are far, far better things ahead than any we leave behind." Let us not settle for a small life when the author of all creation calls us into His grand narrative. May we, like the heroes of old, rise to the occasion, not because we are strong, but because He is. And as we stand, trembling yet resolute, we will find that the power to do so was never ours alone, but a gift from the One who can do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine. Step into the light. The world waits for your radiance. Number 4. Story about God. In a time long forgotten by men but cherished by eternity, a young seeker named Elias wandered the desolate hills of his homeland. Once teeming with the vibrant colors of Eden's promise, the world now seemed cloaked in muted grays. The whispers of prophets had faded, leaving only echoes of divine assurance buried beneath the burdens of everyday toil. Yet Elias, restless and yearning, refused to surrender to the stillness. He sought the eternal energy that spoke of a greater truth. One evening, as the sun bled crimson into the horizon, Elias stumbled upon an ancient path overgrown with thorns. He followed it to a hidden grove where an old man sat beneath a gnarled olive tree, his eyes glowing with a light not of this world. "You seek the source, do you not?" the old man asked, his tender and resolute voice. Harry Elias nodded, caught off guard by the piercing accuracy of the stranger's words. "I do, but the path is shrouded in doubt, and I fear I've wandered too far from it." The old man smiled. "The path is not found with your feet, but with your heart. Sit, and let me tell you a story." The man began to speak of a humble yet divine carpenter who once walked among the lost. He did not wield a sword to command allegiance, nor wear a crown to demand reverence. Instead, his power lay in his alignment. His words, actions, and very presence flowed seamlessly from a truth deeper than the seas and older than the stars. Elias listened intently as the man recounted the tale of this carpenter, whose hands built tables for the common folk, yet stretched wide to embrace the sinners and outcasts. His purpose radiated like the morning sun, warming even the coldest hearts. And though he was scorned by those who clung to power, his influence endured, for he tapped into an energy that no force on earth could diminish. The young seeker's heart burned within him. But how did he achieve such unwavering strength? The old man's gaze deepened. The fleeting validations of men did not bind him. His assurance came from above, from the Father who sent him. Each act of kindness, each word of wisdom, each step toward the cross was in perfect harmony with that eternal source. And in aligning with it, he did not merely live, He revealed what it truly means to be alive. Elias's mind swirled with the implications. But surely, such alignment is impossible for someone like me. I am flawed and frail. The old man chuckled softly. The carpenter chose flawed and frail men to follow him, did he not? Fishermen, tax collectors, even zealots. It was not their perfection he sought, but their willingness. Alignment is not about never faltering. It is about returning time and again to the source. Elias pondered this as the night fell, stars emerging like promises scattered across the heavens. The old man continued, weaving tales of courage born from faith and redemption wrested from despair. He spoke of a kingdom that could not be shaken, built not on gold or stone, but on love. A love that calls each soul by name. As dawn broke, Elias felt a shift within. He realized that the energy he sought was not a distant force, but a presence already stirring in his depths, waiting for him to align his actions, words, and intent with its rhythm. "You've been a great teacher," Elias said as he prepared to leave. The old man's eyes twinkled. "I am but a messenger. The true teacher walks with you even now." With that, the man vanished, leaving Elias alone in the grove, yet profoundly not alone. From that day forward, Elias lived with a renewed purpose. He no longer sought external validation, for his assurance was rooted in something eternal. His actions, though imperfect, carried an intent that resonated with divine truth. And in time, others were drawn to his radiance, not because he demanded it, but because he reflected a light that all hearts instinctively yearned for. Elias's journey became a testament to a timeless truth. The power of alignment with the eternal source transforms not just the seeker, but the world around them. And so, the carpenter's story, told under an olive tree, continued to unfold, not in the pages of ancient texts, but in the lives of those who dared to live it. Number 5. The Shepherd King and the Mastery of Self. In a world veiled by shadow and broken by ambition, the story of David the Shepherd King emerges as a profound testament to self-mastery, freedom, and the power of internal alignment. It is not merely the tale of a boy who became a king, but of a heart that sought God's light amidst the storm of human frailty. David's journey reminds us that true power arises not from external influence, but from the quiet sovereignty of the soul. As a young shepherd, David's life seemed destined for obscurity. His brothers were soldiers, men of stature and strength, but David was the youngest, a keeper of sheep in the hills of Bethlehem. Yet even here, God prepared him among the bleating of lambs and the whisper of olive trees. The field was not a place of insignificance, but of shaping, where David honed his skills with the sling and lyre, and more importantly, his reliance on God. When the lion roared or the bear advanced, David's courage was born not from the might of his arm, but the alignment of his heart with the one who is mightier still. This alignment was tested when the Philistine champion Goliath stood against Israel. No soldier dared face him, for fear gripped their hearts. Yet, armed with nothing but a sling, 5 smooth stones, and unshakable faith, David stepped forward. "You come to me with a sword, a spear, and a javelin," he declared. "But I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts." Here is the mastery of self. David's confidence was not in his skill, but in the unwavering knowledge of who fought for him. The stone flew true, striking Goliath, not because of David's precision alone, but because his aim was aligned with divine purpose. As David ascended to kingship, the allure of external power became a snare. The story of Bathsheba reveals the fragility of even the strongest hearts when they stray from the source of true strength. David's sin, the taking of another man's wife, and orchestrating her husband's death, plunged him into a darkness of his own making. Yet it was here, in the abyss, that David's story diverges from that of many fallen kings. He did not cling to his crown or justify his deeds. Instead, he turned inward, confronting the dissonance in his soul. His psalm of repentance, Psalm 51, is a masterpiece of self-examination and surrender. "Create a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me." David's confession was not weakness, but the ultimate act of freedom. By acknowledging his failure and seeking alignment with God once more, he reclaimed his true identity, not as a king above men, but as a servant of the King of Kings. The lessons from David's life echo into our own. In a world that prizes external accomplishments, it is easy to measure success by titles, wealth, or the applause of others. Yet these are but shadows of actual power, which lies in a heart undivided, a soul anchored in truth. Self-mastery does not mean the absence of struggle, but the courage to face it with authenticity and faith. It is the confidence to say, "Though I stumble, I will rise, for my strength is not my own." Ultimately, David's legacy is not his victories in battle or the splendor of his palace, but the alignment of his heart with God's will. He was called a man after God's own heart, not because he was flawless, but because he pursued the one who is flawless. His life points us to a more excellent shepherd, King Jesus Christ, who embodies perfect self-mastery and freedom. Where David faltered, Christ triumphed. Where David sought redemption, Christ became redemption. The story of David reminds us that the journey of self-mastery is not a solitary endeavor. It is a partnership with the divine, a daily choice to align our will with His, to walk not in the strength of our flesh but in the power of His Spirit. True freedom is found not in the absence of constraint, but in the joyful submission to the one who leads us, beside still waters and restores our souls. So let us, like David, take up our sling and stones, face our giants, and dare to walk confidently in a life aligned with God. Let us, like David, confess our feelings and rise anew, not in our strength, but in His unending grace. For it is in the mastery of self through Him that we find the courage to live authentically, the wisdom to choose rightly, and the freedom to become all we are called to be. Number 6. The alignment of the divine will. Amidst the quietude of the olive grove, an unseen yet undeniable presence whispered through the leaves, bending them gently toward the earth. It was the kind of night where heaven seemed to draw nearer, the stars shining as if they too waited for the unfolding of a greater story. The chosen one knelt upon the soil, cloaked in both humility and purpose. His hands, weathered from the carpenter's trade, pressed into the ground, a sign of his dual connection to the earth and the heavens. The essence of divine strength, invisible yet palpable, surged through him as he prayed. "Not my will, but yours be done," he said, his voice steady yet laden with profound surrender. This alignment with the Father's will was no mere submission. It was a declaration of unity between the finite and the infinite, a moment where time seemed to hold its breath. Challenges become opportunities. When dawn broke, the chosen one rose, not unscathed, but undeniably strengthened. From the wilderness to the courts of kings, challenges awaited him like shadows cast by the brilliance of his light. Yet, in every trial, whether faced with hunger, betrayal, or the tempter's deceit, he turned each difficulty into an opportunity for revelation. Consider the desert, where hunger gnawed at his humanity. The adversary sought to exploit his physical frailty, whispering, "Command these stones to become bread." But he replied, "Man shall not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God." This was not merely resistance, but a reorientation of the human spirit toward eternal sustenance. Or the night in the storm-tossed boat, where fear gripped his companions. While others saw only the wrath of the waves, he saw a chance to reveal the sovereignty of faith. With a simple command, "Peace, be still," the winds obeyed and the waters calmed. It was as if creation itself bent in reverence to the Creator within him. The draw of like-minded souls. As the chosen one walked among the people, those yearning for truth were irresistibly drawn to him. Fishermen left their nets, tax collectors abandoned their posts, and even those weighed down by sin found a wellspring of hope in him. His presence was magnetic, not because he sought adoration, but because his alignment with divine purpose resonated with the deepest longings of the human heart. Spiritual growth and salvation resonated with the deepest longings of the human heart. The 12 he called were not men of status or learning, but individuals whose simplicity made room for greatness. Under his guidance, they became bearers of a message that would transcend empires and centuries. "Follow me," he had said, and they did. Not because of coercion, but because of the clarity of his purpose and the unshakable love in his gaze. The lasting transformation. The greatest testament to the power of aligning with the divine is the lasting transformation it inspires. Long after the chosen one ascended, his message rippled through the world like concentric circles on a still pond. Each challenge overcome, each soul drawn to him, became a living testament to the sustainability of his mission. Take the Apostle Peter, who once faltered in fear, yet became a cornerstone of faith, or Mary Magdalene, whose life, once shrouded in despair, became a radiant testimony of redemption. These were not mere followers. They were lives forever altered by the touch of the divine. In our own lives, this same principle holds. Aligning with the divine does not exempt us from trials, but imbues them with meaning. It transforms burdens into bridges, failures into lessons, and solitude into sacred communion. The same strength that upheld the chosen one is available to all who seek it, flowing not from human effort, but from an eternal and inexhaustible source. A final reflection. As the olive grove bore witness to that fateful night, so does every moment in our lives carry the potential for divine alignment. The invitation is simple yet profound, to yield our will to the one whose purposes are higher than ours, to see challenges as opportunities for grace, and to allow our lives to resonate with a truth that transcends time. For it is in this alignment that life flows effortlessly, as a river toward the sea. And in this flow, we find our purpose and the unshakable peace of knowing we are part of a story far greater than ourselves. Number 7. The Catalyst in the Wilderness. Session 5. Ephraim was an unlikely candidate for greatness. A young shepherd with a quiet demeanor, he lived on the outskirts of Nazareth, far removed from the rumblings of the Roman Empire or the lofty debates of the temple elders. Yet, precisely his insignificance in the eyes of men set the stage for something extraordinary. One evening, as the sky bled shades of crimson and gold, Ephraim wandered into the hills, chasing after a stray lamb. In the solitude of the wilderness, he encountered the voice here, not thunderous as one might imagine the divine, but a quiet, steady whisper that seemed to pierce his very soul. "Ephraim, do you not see the fire within you? Do you not know that I have placed it there?" He fell to his knees, trembling. "Lord, I am but a boy, unlearned and unworthy. How can I carry such a fire?" The voice replied, "It is not by your might, but by mine. Rise and let the world see." From that moment, Ephraim's life transformed. The once timid shepherd began to speak boldly in the village square, igniting hearts like dry kindling before a flame. He spoke of love unyielding, justice that rolled down like waters, and a kingdom that was not of this world. But his newfound courage was not without cost. The village leaders, men steeped in tradition and wary of change, accused him of blasphemy. "Who are you," they demanded, "to speak of the Lord's plans? Are you a prophet, a madman?" "I am neither," Ephraim replied. "I am simply a vessel. The truth does not require my status to be valid." The resistance only sharpened his resolve. And slowly, others began to see. There was Miriam, the widow who had long been shunned for her perceived impurity. She found dignity in Ephraim's words, her tears of shame turning to hope. Then there was Jacob, a merchant who once exploited the poor. Struck by Ephraim's message of justice, he began to give freely, restoring what he had taken. Even the children gathered, their laughter blending with Ephraim's stories of a God who called the least and lifted them higher than kings. "You are like David," one child exclaimed, their eyes wide with wonder. "Small but strong." Word spread beyond the village. Travelers came from neighboring towns, drawn by the rumors of a young shepherd, whose words carried the weight of heaven. Ephraim's fire became a catalyst, transforming him and awakening a hunger for truth and goodness in all who listened. And then came the day of testing. The village leaders, growing increasingly threatened, devised a plan. They brought Ephraim before a gathering of elders and demanded that he renounce his teachings. They mocked him, pointing out his youth, lack of formal training, and lowly station. Ephraim stood firm. "You see a shepherd, unfit to speak of the Lord. But the Lord sees what you cannot. His fire burns in me, and I will not quench it for your approval." His words silenced the room. For a moment, the elders felt the sting of truth, the fire in their hearts long extinguished by pride and fear. From that day forward, Ephraim's village was never the same. Those who once dismissed him could no longer deny the power of his authenticity. His courage inspired others to rise. Miriam became a beacon of compassion for the downtrodden, Jacob a symbol of justice and generosity. Even the elders, though resisted, began to question their hearts. Ephron's transformation rippled outward, creating a collective awakening. The fire he carried was no longer his alone. It burned in all who dared to embrace it. Years later, when Ephron's name had faded into history, his legacy remained. Once ordinary and unremarkable, the small village had become a place of light, a testament to what happens when one person dares to let God's fire shine through their weakness. And somewhere in the wilderness, the voice still whispers, seeking another heart to ignite. Number 8. The Mirror of Clarity. Elara had lived her life surrounded by the fog of half-truths and whispers. In her small village, nestled between the towering mountains and the wide-open sky, stories were currency and deception was an art. Yet something within her always yearned for more, a clarity she couldn't define but deeply desired. One morning, as the sun split the sky into gold and crimson, Elara felt a pull she couldn't resist. The villagers had always spoken of the Hermit's Grove, a place feared for its legends and avoided for its silence. But Elara's heart told her this was the path to something greater. She set out with only the cloak on her back and a small loaf of bread. Deep in the grove, she found him, a man unlike any she had ever seen. His eyes, bright and unwavering, seemed to see through her. His presence was at once calming and unnerving. "You seek clarity," he said, his voice like the rustling of ancient trees. "How did you know?" she asked, startled. "Clarity reveals itself only to those who desire truth above comfort." He gestured to a small, unassuming mirror set against the base of an ancient oak. Its frame was simple wood, yet it glowed faintly, as though lit from within. "This is the mirror of clarity," the man explained. "It will show you what you need to see, not what you want. Are you ready?" Elara hesitated. She had always believed she was strong, honest, and kind, but part of her feared what the mirror might reveal. Still, her longing for truth was more potent than her fear. When she peered into the mirror, her breath caught. At first she saw herself as she imagined, brave, noble, and wise, but the image shifted. The mirror revealed moments she had buried, times when she had chosen comfort over honesty and turned away from someone in need to preserve her peace. The clarity was piercing, but it was not cruel. Instead, it felt like a light sweeping away the shadows. Tears streamed down her face. "I'm not who I thought I was," she whispered. "No," the man said gently. "You are more. For every failing you see, there is a spark of divine purpose within you, waiting to be kindled. Clarity is not about perfection, but about seeing the truth and choosing transformation." Elara straightened. "What must I do?" "Return to your village," the man instructed. "Speak the truth, even when it is hard. Act with purpose, even when it is costly. And above all, remember that clarity is not a destination, but a way of living." When Elara returned, the village was as she had left it, a web of secrets and veiled motives. But she was no longer the same. She began to speak boldly, calling out falsehoods and bringing light to hidden places. At first, the villagers resisted her, mocking her for her newfound courage. Yet over time, her clarity became a beacon. Others, inspired by her example, began to seek their truths. One day, a young boy approached her. "How did you become so fearless?" he asked. Elara knelt to meet his gaze. "It's not fearlessness," she said. "It's faith. When you see the truth clearly, about yourself, others, and God, you realize nothing can truly harm you. The lies lose their power, and in their place, you find an unshakable strength." Years later, the village had transformed. What was once a place of shadows had become a community of light. And though Elara's hair had turned silver, her eyes still burned with the clarity she had found that day in the grove. For Elara, the mirror of clarity was not just an artifact. It was a way of being, a divine gift that revealed the truth and empowered her to live in alignment with her God-given purpose. And as she walked through the village, she knew one thing for sure: clarity was the greatest power of all. Number 9. Warrior Spirit Biblical Story. In the shadow of the great cedars of Lebanon, a young shepherd named Elias stood at the threshold of a choice that would alter not only his life, but the lives of countless others. The skies above him churned with storm clouds, and the winds whispered of an impending challenge, a call that demanded courage and conviction. Elias had long tended his flocks in the quiet hills, weaving psalms from the melodies of the streams and the rustling leaves. But the tranquility of his days belied the storm within. Deep in his heart he harbored a question: could one so ordinary as he rise to fulfill the purposes of the Almighty? His doubts often clung to him like shadows, yet the words of the prophets burned brightly in his soul. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. The Lord your God goes with you. A stranger approached one fateful evening as Elias sat beneath an ancient olive tree. Clad in armor that gleamed like fire and with eyes that seemed to pierce the veil of time, the figure introduced himself as a messenger of the Lord. "Elias, son of Judah," the stranger said, "you have been chosen to defend the city of Zion against the rising tide of darkness. You are to become a warrior, not of flesh, but of spirit, for the battle is the Lord's, and he has found favor in your heart." Fear gripped Elias like a vice. "How can this be?" he stammered. "I am no warrior. My hands are calloused from the staff, not the sword. My courage falters even at the rustle of wolves in the night." The messenger's gaze softened but grew no less resolute. "The strength you seek is not of this world, Elias. It is forged in faith, tempered by trials, and crowned with the victory of surrender. You must trust in the one who calls you." The days that followed tested Elias in ways he could not have imagined. His path led him to the wilderness, where the sun blazed mercilessly and the nights chilled him to his marrow. He fasted and prayed, wrestling with doubts that clawed at his resolve. Yet in those desolate places, he found the whispers of God growing louder, assuring him that his power was perfected in weakness. One night, Elias was given a vision as he knelt in prayer. He saw a great tree, its roots entwined with gold and its branches stretching toward the heavens, and rivers of living water from its fruit, nourishing the dry and barren land. A voice said, "This is the strength I give you, Elias, to stand firm and bear fruit even when the storm rages. For my spirit within you is mightier than the armies of the earth." Elias awoke with a fire in his heart. He returned to his village, no longer the uncertain shepherd, but a man transformed. Word spread of his resolve, and others rallied to his side. Together they prepared to defend Zion, not with swords alone, but with prayers, songs, and the unshakable conviction that the Lord's promises would prevail. The day of battle arrived. The enemy's forces loomed on the horizon, a sea of darkness threatening to engulf the light. But Elias stood at the forefront, clad in simple armor and armed with faith. He lifted his voice in a psalm, and his companions joined him. "The Lord is my light and salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid?" As their song rose, it seemed the very heavens responded. The winds shifted, and the enemy's ranks faltered. In that moment, it was not Elias or his companions who fought, but the Lord himself, turning the tide with his unseen hand. When the dust settled, Zion stood unscathed. Elias fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face, as he thanked the one who had made the impossible possible. The people hailed him as a hero, but Elias knew the truth. He was but a vessel, a humble shepherd who had dared to trust in the greatness of God. In the following years, Elias' story became a beacon of hope. His name was spoken in hushed reverence, not for his strength, but his surrender. He had embodied the warrior spirit, a resilience born of faith, a courage that defied fear, and a strength that came from within and from above. And so, Elias' legacy endured, a testament to the truth that even the smallest of us can become mighty when we walk in the purposes of the Lord. For the battles we face, both within and without, are not ours to bear alone. They belong to the one who calls us, equips us, and leads us to victory. Let's not forget. Number 10. The Mastery of the Soul, a tale of faith and transformation. Long ago, a humble shepherd named Nathanael lived in the heart of a bustling kingdom. Unlike others of his trade, Nathanael was quite curious about life's more profound mysteries. While his peers would spend their evenings recounting mundane tales of their flocks, Nathanael would gaze at the stars, pondering the nature of the one who had placed them there. One fateful evening as he sat on the hillside, the heavens seemed to shimmer with an otherworldly light. From the glow emerged a figure cloaked in radiance, eyes like molten gold yet filled with profound gentleness. The figure spoke, "Nathanael, son of the earth, you have sought truth where many see only shadows. Rise and follow me, for your life's path is about to change." Though trembling, Nathanael obeyed. The figure led him to a vast desert, barren yet alive with whispers of eternity. There, Nathanael was instructed to fast and reflect for 40 days. On the first day, his thoughts churned with questions. "Why me, Lord? I am but a shepherd, unlearned and small." Yet as the days passed, his mind quieted, and he began to perceive a new truth. He realized that his thoughts shaped his perception of the world. His fears, insecurities, and doubts had clouded the clarity of the divine purpose written within him. By the 20th day, Nathanael discovered the principle of mental power, that what he focused on would expand and define his reality. Before seeing only isolation and insignificance, he began to sense the divine tapestry in which his life was a vital thread. "Every thought is a seed," the radiant figure reminded him. "What you plant in your heart will grow. Sow faith, Nathanael, and reap a life aligned with the will of the Creator." On the 30th day, Nathanael encountered the challenge of emotional control. A storm arose, fierce and unrelenting. Winds howled and the sand whipped against his face. Panic surged within him, threatening to undo his newfound peace. Yet he recalled the lessons he had learned. Mastery over thoughts precedes mastery over emotions. Instead of succumbing to fear, he chose to trust. Closing his eyes, he whispered, "The one who called me here will sustain me." In that moment, the storm ceased, and a profound stillness enveloped him. "You have learned well," said the figure, appearing again in all its radiance. "Your journey does not end here, but it begins anew. You have grasped the key to achieving your dreams and living a life of purpose, alignment with the divine will through the mastery of your mind and heart." Nathanael was no longer merely a shepherd when he returned to the kingdom. His words carried the weight of someone who had walked with the eternal. Villagers sought his counsel, drawn to the peace that radiated from him. "How do you remain unshaken by trials?" they asked. Nathanael replied, "The storms of life are not meant to destroy us, but to refine us. Thoughts and beliefs shape reality. Our lives follow where we set our minds. Fear and insecurity are like the shifting sands, but faith is the firm anchor." Over time, his influence grew. Nathanael's teachings began to transform the hearts of many, inspiring them to master their minds and emotions. People learned to let go of bitterness, embrace forgiveness, and pursue dreams aligned with their God-given purpose. And though Nathanael's outward life seemed simple, those who knew him recognized the profound depth of a man forever changed by the touch of the divine. In the end, Nathanael's story became more than just his own. It was a testament to the timeless truth that within each soul lies the power to rise above fear, align with purpose, and reflect the glory of the Creator's design. He often said, "The mind is the battlefield, and the heart is the treasure. Master these, and you will walk in the light of eternity." And so his legacy endured, not as a monument of stone, but as a light kindled in the hearts of those who dared to believe that their lives too could echo the eternal. Number 11. Biblical Story Ripple Effect. Life seemed unchanging in the quiet village of Bethel, nestled among rolling hills and ancient olive trees. The villagers toiled daily and rested by night, bound by the survival routine. Yet beneath the surface of their existence, a longing stirred, an unspoken desire for something greater, a yearning to break free from the invisible chains of their limitations. Among them lived Elias, a carpenter known for his meticulous craft but overshadowed by self-doubt. Though skilled, Elias believed his work held no greater purpose than providing for his family. He often stood at his bench, carving intricate patterns into wood, wondering if his efforts mattered in the grand design of creation. "What difference can a simple carpenter make?" he would muse, gazing at the stars that seemed to mock his insignificance. One evening, a stranger appeared at the village well as the sun dipped below the horizon. Cloaked in garments that shimmered faintly like morning dew, he exuded a comforting and commanding presence. The villagers gathered, drawn by an inexplicable pull. The stranger spoke in a voice that resonated with the cadence of eternity. "I bring a message," he began, "not just for kings or prophets, but for you, the shepherds, the weavers, the carpenters. Each of you is called to a greater purpose than you dare imagine. The Creator does not measure worth by titles or riches, but by the heart willing to serve." His words ignited a spark in Elias. That night, he dreamed of a great tree, its branches reaching toward heaven while its roots delved deep into the earth. The tree bore fruit that shone like jewels, and its seeds, carried by the wind, took root wherever they fell. When Elias awoke, the vision lingered, accompanied by a simple yet profound realization. He was called to plant such seeds, acts of faith and service that would grow and transform. Elias began small. He repaired a widow's broken table without charge, carved toys for orphan children, and crafted a sturdy plow for a struggling farmer. Each work was infused with prayer and love, offered as a quiet act of worship. At first, these acts seemed insignificant, but something remarkable began to happen. The widow, moved by Elias's kindness, began sharing her meager bread with needy neighbors. The children, clutching their toys, laughed and played, bringing joy to a weary village. With his new plow, the farmer harvested a surplus and shared it with the community. Word of Elias's work spread beyond Bethel. Travelers paused in the village, curious about the carpenter whose deeds spoke of a love that transcended obligation. Some stayed to learn his craft, others carried his story to distant towns. Elias's humility and dedication inspired a ripple effect, touching lives in ways he could never have foreseen. Years later, a scribe traveling through Bethel recorded the transformation. "It is not the size of one's actions, but the spirit in which they are done, that changes the world," he wrote. This village, once ordinary, now hums with life and generosity. A shared purpose binds its people, each contributing their gifts for the good of all. And at the heart of it stands a carpenter, whose legacy is not in his hands, but in the lives he has touched. When Elias grew old, he returned to the vision of the tree. Sitting beneath a real olive tree one evening, surrounded by villagers who had become his extended family, he reflected on the stranger's message. He realized the tree in his dream was not a single grand act, but the cumulative result of countless tiny seeds planted in faith. Each act of kindness, each moment of courage, had grown into something far more significant than himself. "We are all sowers," he said softly to the crowd. "Some may plant, others may water, but the Creator makes all things grow. Never underestimate the power of a small act done in love." Elias' words and life left a legacy long after his time. The village of Bethel became a beacon of hope, its people renowned for their generosity and faith. Travelers continued to visit, not for trade or wealth, but to glimpse a community transformed by the quiet, unwavering acts of a simple carpenter who dared to believe he was part of a greater story. And so it was that Elias's life became a parable, a living testament to the truth that even the smallest seed, when planted in faith, can yield a harvest beyond measure. For in the kingdom of heaven, greatness is not found in grandeur, but in the ripple effect of love and transformation. Number 12. The Symphony of Surrender. A divine melody is woven into the fabric of creation, a rhythm that pulses through the cosmos. It is the music of God, an eternal song of purpose, harmony, and love. Yet we often find ourselves out of tune, striving against its cadence, clinging to our own designs. The dissonance creates chaos in our hearts, and we wonder why life feels like an endless uphill climb. But what if surrender, not struggle, is the secret to finding peace? The scriptures whisper this truth in stories and parables. Consider Peter, a fisherman well acquainted with the toil of his craft. One night, despite his best efforts, he caught nothing. Frustrated, he began washing his nets when Jesus approached him with a simple command: "Put out into the deep and let down your nets for a catch." Luke 5:04. Peter hesitated, voicing his doubts, but something in Jesus' presence stirred him to obedience. He cast his net again, and the miraculous catch that followed was so abundant that his boat began to sink. In that moment, Peter realized the power of surrender, not to the sea, but to the divine rhythm guiding it. This lesson is as relevant today as it was on that Galilean shore. To surrender is not to resign oneself to passivity or failure, but to align with the higher purpose of the Creator. It is to trust that the hand that set the stars in place also guides the intricate details of our lives. Surrender unlocks divine flow. When we release our grip on control, we open ourselves to possibilities we could never orchestrate. Doors swing open where walls once stood. Opportunities appear as if on cue, not because we forced them, but because we stepped into alignment with God's timing. Think of the Israelites standing before the Red Sea. Pharaoh's army closing in behind them. In their terror, they cried out for deliverance. God's instruction through Moses was stunningly simple. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. Exodus chapter 14, verse 13. No battle plan, no complex strategy, just surrendered to the divine flow. The sea parted and their path to freedom unfolded. This is not a call to inaction, but a reminder to trust the process. Surrender does not mean abandoning effort. It means partnering with God's wisdom rather than fighting against it. From struggle to peace, when we resist the rhythm of God, we create inner turmoil. Anxiety, frustration, and exhaustion become our constant companions. Yet, surrender replaces these burdens with peace. It's a peace that transcends understanding, Philippians 4:7, born not from circumstances, but from the assurance that we are in divine hands. Consider Jesus' words, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Matthew chapter 11, verses 28. His invitation is not to add more to our load, but to exchange it for his light and easy yoke. Surrender is the gateway to this rest. Practical surrender in daily life. The act of surrender begins with a simple prayer. Not my will, but yours be done. Luke 22, verse 42. It is an intentional release, a choice to trust God's plan even when we cannot see the full picture. But surrender is also practical. It means stepping back when the urge to control arises, seeking wisdom in Scripture, and listening for the still, small voice of the Spirit. In the busyness of modern life, surrender can feel counterintuitive. We are taught to hustle, to strive, to plan every detail. Yet in yielding to God's rhythm, we find a harmony that no effort can produce. It is as if we become instruments in a grand orchestra, each note we play resonating perfectly with the whole. The gift of growth and healing. Finally, surrender brings growth and healing. Like clay in the potter's hands, we are shaped through yielding. The trials we face refine us. The detours we take often lead us to unexpected blessings. By letting go, we make space for God to work miracles. Joseph, sold into slavery by his brothers, endured years of suffering, yet he later declared, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good." Genesis 50:20. His surrender to God's plan turned his pain into purpose, saving many lives. In our own lives, surrender can transform wounds into wisdom, fear into faith, and struggle into serenity. An invitation to trust. The divine rhythm is always present, inviting us to step into its flow. The choice to surrender is ours, but the rewards are immeasurable. A life aligned with purpose, peace that endures, and the joy of walking hand in hand with the Creator. So let us, like Peter, cast our nets again. This time not in our strength, but in obedience. Like the Israelites, let us stand firm and watch as the seas before us part. And let us, like Jesus, pray with unwavering trust. Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. Luke chapter 23, verses 46 and 5. The music of surrender awaits. Will you join the symphony? Number 13, the symphony of surrender. A divine melody is woven into the fabric of creation, a rhythm that pulses through the cosmos. It is the music of God, an eternal song of purpose, harmony, and love. Yet we often find ourselves out of tune, striving against its cadence, clinging to our own designs. The dissonance creates chaos in our hearts, and we wonder why life feels like an endless uphill climb. But what if surrender, not struggle, is the secret to finding peace? The Scriptures whisper this truth in stories and parables. Consider Peter, a fisherman well acquainted with the toil of his craft. One night, despite his best efforts, he caught nothing. Frustrated, he began washing his nets when Jesus approached him with a simple command: "Put out into the deep and let down your nets for a catch." Luke 5 verse 5. Peter hesitated, voicing his doubts, but something in Jesus' presence stirred him to obedience. He cast his net again, and the miraculous catch that followed was so abundant that his boat began to sink. In that moment, Peter realized the power of surrender, not to the sea, but to the divine rhythm guiding it. This lesson is as relevant today as it was on that Galilean shore. To surrender is not to resign oneself to passivity or failure, but to align with the higher purpose of the Creator. It is to trust that the hand that set the stars in place also guides the intricate details of our lives. Surrender unlocks divine flow. When we release our grip on control, we open ourselves to possibilities we could never orchestrate. Doors swing open where walls once stood. Opportunities appear as if on cue, not because we forced them, but because we stepped into alignment with God's timing. Think of the Israelites standing before the Red Sea, Pharaoh's army closing in behind them. In their terror, they cried out for deliverance. God's instruction through Moses was stunningly simple: "Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today." Exodus 14:13. No battle plan, no complex strategy, just surrender to the divine flow. The sea parted, and their path to freedom unfolded. This is not a call to inaction, but a reminder to trust the process. Surrender does not mean abandoning effort. It means partnering with God's wisdom rather than fighting against it. From struggle to peace. When we resist the rhythm of God, we create inner turmoil. Anxiety, frustration, and exhaustion become our constant companions. Yet, surrender replaces these burdens with peace. It's a peace that transcends understanding, Philippians 4:7. Born not from circumstances, but from the assurance that we are held in divine hands. Consider Jesus' words: "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Matthew 11:28. His invitation is not to add more to our load, but to exchange it for his light and easy yoke. Surrender is the gateway to this rest. Practical surrender in daily life. The act of surrender begins with a simple prayer: "Not my will, but yours be done." Luke chapter 22, verse 42. It is an intentional release, a choice to trust God's plan even when we cannot see the full picture. But surrender is also practical. It means stepping back when the urge to control arises, seeking wisdom in Scripture, and listening for the still, small voice of the Spirit. In the busyness of modern life, surrender can feel counterintuitive. We are taught to hustle, to strive, to plan every detail. Yet, in yielding to God's rhythm, we find a harmony that no amount of effort can produce. It is as if we become instruments in a grand orchestra, each note we play resonating perfectly with the whole. The gift of growth and healing. Finally, surrender brings growth and healing. Like clay in the potter's hands, we are shaped through yielding. The trials we face refine us. The detours we take often lead us to unexpected blessings. By letting go, we make space for God to work miracles. Joseph, sold into slavery by his brothers, endured years of suffering. Yet he later declared, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good." Genesis 50:20. His surrender to God's plan turned his pain into purpose, saving many lives. In our own lives, surrender can transform wounds into wisdom, fear into faith, and struggle into serenity. An invitation to trust. The divine rhythm is always present, inviting us to step into its flow. The choice to surrender is ours, but the rewards are immeasurable: a life aligned with purpose, peace that endures, and the joy of walking hand in hand with the Creator. So let us, like Peter, cast our nets again, this time not in our strength, but in obedience. Like the Israelites, let us stand firm and watch as the seas before us part. And let us, like Jesus, pray with unwavering trust: "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit." Luke chapter 23, verses 46. And the music of surrender awaits. Will you join the symphony? To those who have journeyed through this message, understand this: you were not drawn here by chance. A guiding hand has brought you to this moment, whispering that you are more than you perceive, called to a higher purpose. The transformation you are beginning is no fleeting change, but a profound alignment with the eternal truths woven into the fabric of the universe. As you cast off doubt and fear, you stand on the threshold of magnificence, empowered not by fleeting applause, but by an inner light that no force can extinguish. You are invited to step boldly into your destiny, to radiate authenticity, and to inspire others to rise alongside you. If this message has resonated within you, I invite you to like, subscribe, and share. Let us delve deeper into the mysteries of growth, freedom, and divine purpose. Your next step begins now.